This video is not going to have a happy ending. It's going to have challenges, and that's the reality. We all face challenges with our projects, and this is going to be one. Going to have to figure out a way to overcome it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the infamous project. It is a Wednesday evening, and I just finished a pretty good day's worth of work on the twin turbo Coyote Fox. And if you guys have been following that project, I'm sure you're quite interested, as am I. I want to see that thing all back together, see what it looks like and sounds like and drives like once that's buttoned up. But I'm home here and feeling a little bit motivated, even though it's later in the day, because the more that I look at this motor sitting here for the Lightning, the more that I want to just get it installed in the truck. Every time that I'm chilling on the sofa here watching TV, I'm forced to look at it. And the more that I look at it, I'm looking at a few things that need to be cleaned up, things that are on it. But the most important thing that I've noticed is that it's pretty much ready to drop in. In fact, I got to pull out more things out of the engine bay, out of the truck, to accommodate, if anything, you know, like the injector and wiring harness that's in here, that can come out because, well, it's all ready to go on this engine. It's been modified accordingly. So I did notice there's already motor mounts on this guy, but on the one side down here, there's no bolt right here. I don't want to run a motor mount with only 2 bolts in it. I want my motor mounts to be secure on there, so I need to deal with that. I need to bolt on a crank sensor, so I can probably peel the one off of my old motor here and get that bolted on. And we'll pull the turbos off, get these out of the way. There's really no reason for them to be on right now, and this is probably all going to get plumbed and routed in a different way anyways. But if I can get this thing in a close position to be able to drop in, there's really no reason stopping me from getting it in the truck, seeing if we can get it to fire up. And then from there, we'll figure out how to route and install the turbos. So I'm going to go ahead now and pull these turbos off. Oh, one other thing. So I was bored yesterday and I was doing a little work too. So I pulled off the coil covers and painted them up silver here, and actually pulled off my infamous project plaque that was on the plenum of my old motor. Figured I'd stick it here where that old Intech 32 valve plate was. So something a little different, and I didn't like the fact that they were red. So there we go. Let's get going and see what we can do here. All right, guys, there we go. So we got the turbos disconnected from the back side of the collectors of the headers, pulled off the intakes. They weren't bolted on. They were just kind of sitting on there. And one other thing that I noticed is this coolant tube. So this guy is part of your heater core setup and everything else. And if you look really close down here, it looks like it's not on all the way. Guess it was on one O-ring, but definitely not on both. So I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to see if I can't get that on there all the way. The last thing I want is a bunch of coolant leaking down underneath here. Now the nice part about this application, this is all open underneath here, so it's not like this guy over here where your intercooler and everything else would be in the way, and there'd be no way for you to ever get your hands in there. Looks like you had a little bit of silicone in there. I'm going to put some of the right stuff so that way I make sure that nothing is for sure going to leak. So, oh yeah, there's the silicone there. So I'm going to make sure that get this all cleaned up and we don't run into any issues. feel a lot better. And I just need to get the orientation of this tube right. Looks like I just need to do a little tweak up here. The coolant tube is on, and I got some gasket maker on there and everything to make sure that we're gonna have no leaks underneath the intake manifold. Got some hardware bolted on here. I cut off the tab up here just because this does not fit the same way on this tube. I'm assuming this is the same like that is on the Lightning motor, and the distance between these two bolts on the 32 valve head is a little bit different, but that was fine. It should be more than sturdy enough. Got my ground strap on here and sort of going through cleaning up some wiring. Just have to get a lighter and heat up the shrink tube down here so we can get those connectors fixed that were just kind of randomly epoxied. I'm gonna go over and clean up this harness a little bit more. I got some harness tape, so I'll clean all that up. And other than that, things are pretty good in terms of, I think, being able to drop it in the truck. Now I did go ahead and put a crank sensor here. That was, I think this is the connector for it. Let's see if that fits, and it does. So that's good. Can't remember, one of these is probably air conditioning. So again, I'm gonna clean up a few connectors, and I got to do that motor mount on the other side. And the other thing that we need to think about is how is the oil going to drain from the turbos into the pan. There's actually no drain plug system in here, so that is one thing that I need to consider. Hole. Go. Time for welding. So it wasn't just as simple as pulling the intake off and jamming the motor in there. After further inspection, there's a few things that needed to be addressed. Number one, obviously where we left off, is doing a little bit of customization to the driver's side motor mount. I just don't feel comfortable with only 2 bolts in there. So once I'm done, I'm actually gonna end up with 4 bolts. So that thing will be nice and strong and tidy. I don't know if there's another mount that could be cross-referenced and used instead. It's too bad that I couldn't make that original Lightning mount works, because the ear actually goes up and over in the right direction, but things just don't line up. Other than the oil tap process for the oil pan, the oil feed return, once that stuff is done, we can pick this thing up by its chain again and get it put into the truck. Alright guys, so I pulled the pan off and I looked down inside. I could see something and I found this, and I feel like it might have been part of an old dipstick tube. So, not sure. I think there's an O-ring in there too, actually. Yeah, so there's the O-ring. So that's interesting. Probably a good thing I popped the pan off. Obviously that piece wouldn't have gone anywhere, but still better to get it out now than something potentially happening later. Next day, got my motor mount all welded up and painted. So that should be nice and strong. I'll be able to get enough bolts in that now. So I'm definitely happy about that. I was looking at the oil pan and the oil return system from the turbo setup, and apparently that's what this guy back here was set up for. So the builder's intention was to run a scavenger pump, and that would essentially pull the oil from the turbos and then be able to dump it back in here. So really neat idea in principle or in theory. However, after talking with a few friends of mine, it is a liability, meaning that if for whatever reason that pump isn't working or the pump breaks or any of those things, well then my oil isn't going to leave the turbos properly. So I opted to actually pull the oil pan off, and I'm going to get that tapped for 2 return lines. However, that's the plan. I just feel like let gravity and nature do its thing, so that way, you know, it's just less things to break, less things to worry about. It's almost about that time. Just finished playing musical engine stands. So we got my old motor off the floor, up onto the stand after we got the 32 valve off, got the flex plate on, torqued it down, got the oil pan back on, got those oil drain bungs welded in there. So that way we have individual drains for each turbo, and we'll be able to let gravity do its thing instead of running the scavenge pump. And what else? The motor mount bolted up without a hitch, so all that is good. Made sure all the bolts were tight and pulled out the old injector harness and engine harness that was still in the truck, because this one is here and should be plug and play. So everything is open in here. I got the transmission jacked up and ready to be mated. Now the one thing that I'll probably have to do is I'm probably have to pull the front bumper cover off of the truck. And funny enough, you can pull your motor out, but trying to put a motor in with these Pittsburgh 2-ton hoists, you end up with this guy rubbing up against your front bumper a little bit more comfort than you would like to. The reality is when you're pulling a motor out and you have that tension pulling back, it's kind of working in your favor because, well, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to pull it away from the transmission and get it up off the mounts, up and out of the truck. But when you're trying to go in, you're actually trying to do the reverse, which means you actually got to try and get this as far down in there as possible. So as much as I hate taking the front bumper off, I'm gonna do it just so I don't wreck any paint or do anything stupid. So I'm gonna go have some dinner, get re-energized, cool down, and we'll see if I come back out here. It is Friday night after all. So what better thing to do than to jam a motor in your truck? I'm back from bumpers off. Got lots of room, hopefully. Might need to move the chill lounge over a little bit. There we go, the chill lounge is moved. Let's try and get this thing in there. And the reason why I'm so motivated on a Friday night to do it is because this actually isn't my cherry picker. This is my neighbor's over at the commercial shop, because my friend Charles has my cherry picker because he blew up the motor in his BMW. And long story short, Ricky needs his cherry picker back, so I want to get this motor set in here. So it's only me. I don't have help this time. Last time I had Notorious here, and man, we struggled and we fought trying to get the flywheel or the flex plate to line up with the torque converter. And I'm hoping things go a little bit easier this time. So with that said, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to try and get this thing in here and call it a night. When you're working on your own, you need to innovate, try and hold the motor in place. I need to investigate, check the motor mounts, and most importantly, see how the flex plate is lining up against the torque converter. So if I need to, I'll put a wrench on here and we'll rotate the motor to try and get the studs to line up. So just try and crawl under here. The stud, there's the hole. I'm literally like crawling under here. So there's the hole. The stud's literally sitting like right there. So I just need to rotate, get this flex plate to go counterclockwise, like ever so slightly. And then we're gonna be in a real close position. See if we can get that lined up. Under the truck, above the truck, under the truck, above the truck. I've done it probably about 20 times now. And I think I've got the transmission lined up with the dowel pins. I have to rotate the crank just a little bit clockwise. And I feel like the studs for the torque converter will come through the flex plate. And we're so close to be lined up with these motor mounts, I can feel it. You can see how creative I've got here. The GoPro's died numerous times just while I've been underneath and getting hot and everything else. But this is the reality. You know, thought it would go really easy. I'm just going to be happy if these headers clear and I get this thing to sit down in here. So let me rotate the crank a little bit, see if I can push it back, and we'll see what happens. So it's been probably about 2 hours trying to wrestle this thing in, and while it's pretty much in, it's in from the standpoint of the transmission has bolts into the back of the block. The studs from the torque converter are coming through the flex plate. So everything's actually good there. Where things aren't lining up, and this is the reality. A lot of my stuff that I do, you guys are always like, oh, you make it look so easy. Things aren't always easy, guys. And I'm telling you, Lightnings are not easy vehicles to work on. They're just not. So where I'm at and where I'm calling it for not only the evening, but for this video as well, is this video is not going to have a happy ending. It's going to have challenges, and that's the reality. We all face challenges with our projects, and this is going to be one. Going to have to figure out a way to overcome it. So the motor mount is sitting down fine over on the passenger side, and I'm really actually happy with the fitment of the header, because you got to remember the headers are shorties that are reverse mounted so that we can run all of our turbo set up forward, right? So if you guys look at this guy down here, this has actually got clearance from this bracket here for the upper control arm. I'm actually okay with that. There's no issues. So everything is good. Like I said, the motor mount's in place down there. No problem. Driver's side, not as nice. So you can see we're pretty much just touching on the top of this bracket, which isn't a massive ordeal. That can be notched or modified, but the real problem is that header is sitting on the steering shaft. So I'm not sure what the plan of attack is going to be there, and it's just messy over here. It's a really, really tight fit with all of the steering mechanisms in the way. Of course, we got our ABS unit right here as well. Like I said, I'm not overly concerned about that. In fact, my ABS stopped working a while ago. It gives a clunk when the truck first starts up and ABS doesn't work, which that's fine by me. So with that said, we do need to figure out steering. This is just really, really tight in general. So gonna have to figure out what to do here, because obviously we want to be able to steer the truck, and there's really not that much room. So that is where I'm going to leave stuff. So this is where we call it. We open a beer, we think about it, we sleep on it, we come back tomorrow, we look at it, maybe we procrastinate, try and forget about it. hope that tomorrow magically things fit when we come out to look. And yeah, it's not going to. The other thing is that the motor mount itself, you got to remember, I had to do some custom mounting there. I don't even know what that mount is off of. And you can see, although that we're all lined up, that I don't know if it's going to seat down 100% where it needs to. We might luck out. Again, I need to remove the steering shaft here in order to make room and allow this to come down where it needs to sit. And then from there, we can figure out exactly what needs to happen. But like I said, that's going to be it for tonight. And if for whatever reason, we might have to shim that mount on the K-frame side up a little bit, maybe to get a bit closer to where the mount side on the block is. So there you have it, guys. A nice, hot, sweaty Friday evening. A lot of people are always like, man, why don't you turn your AC on? I am hot by nature. Now, obviously, if the AC was on, I probably wouldn't sweat as much, but it's like I'm not uncomfortable. So this is just me. When you're bald-headed, you don't have anywhere for the sweat to go other than what your hat will soak up. So that's pretty much it. Unless it's like 110 degrees outside, my AC stays off. Plus, it just blows up more dust and everything else in here. So there you have it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. We'll overcome this. We'll figure it out. I'm pretty determined to make sure that this can work. I'm very interested, in fact, even just to make sure that the intakes and everything are going to fit in there. And let's see what happens in the next video. So thank you again for following along. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I know it's not the best outcome for a video, but hey, it's reality. So thank you again for all your support. We'll see you here next time on the Infamous Project.